added to the mess that the Union Army was in by Dan Sickles moving his corps forward. It left his right side and the Union left pretty much wide open. It was so thin, there was almost nobody there at all. At one point during McLaws' advance in that area, as Sickles is getting smashed and hammered back and pushed backwards, and the Union Army's retreating in that area, as everybody thought they would, there was a wide gap there, a huge gap, and a bunch of Alabama regiments were coming up that way. Upwards of several hundred men were coming that way. Hancock was in that area, who'd been kind of in charge of keeping an eye on that area of the battlefield, and he saw what was going to happen. The Confederates were about to split the Union line, basically roll up the line, and he probably could have carried the day. He only had minutes to close that gap. He found only one regiment in the area. It was the 1st Minnesota Volunteers, and he said to them, "You see those colors coming at you?" Putting in my own words, and a bunch of Confederate flags, and he said, "Take them." And the men realized what was being asked of them. They saw how heavily outnumbered they were, but they followed orders, and the 400 some odd men of the 1st Minnesota charged at the Alabama Brigade. And in 10 minutes, they went from 420 men who went in the beginning of the battle, and when they finally retreated, 10 minutes later, they were down to 47 men. The 1st Minnesota suffered 90% casualties of what remained of their regiment in 10 minutes. But it gave Hancock the time to get more troops behind them to close that gap. So hats off and hoorah to the 1st Minnesota Volunteers. They suffered the highest casualties, and they pretty much saved the Union position that day on Cemetery Ridge.